Hi, this is Dr. Erica Lewis recording this module lecture on innovation models in nursing leader decision making. Similar to how we've approached other constructs in this course, I'm not going to review every detail that you've likely learned in your master's and undergraduate about current nurse leader decision making. You've had a lot of content and experience with that. I'll be touching on some of that here just to give some comparisons, but I want you to spend a moment reflecting, as a nurse leader, how do you currently make decisions? How do you make practical decisions? How do you make complex decisions? How do you make ethical decisions? Consider those ways as we begin thinking about some new methods of decision making so we can compare and contrast and see where there's a fit for your current methods. So innovation in nursing, why would we even think about considering innovation as part of our decision-making framework? We already have to think about a lot as nurse leaders, and this is just one more thing, perhaps. I'm going to argue that this could make our lives easier, more efficient, and effective with our decision-making, and highlight some of the differences over the course of the next several modules between how we make decisions currently and how we may begin to make decisions to involve innovation in our thoughts. So currently, innovation is recognized as important to nursing education and practice by a wide variety of experts, from the IHI to the AACN. Most recently, the IHI published Achieving a white paper in 2023, and there's several aspects of that. One was on achieving equity, and several portions of that white paper point to innovation in nursing specifically as being important to the future of healthcare. Second, the problems facing healthcare today require innovation. Many of the problems we deal with are wicked problems, and wicked problems have a very specific definition. We'll move on to explain that here in the next slide. But here I want to just say that really these wicked problems require innovation for solving them. And many of the things we face in healthcare rise to that level of challenge. Finally, if we want to generate new empirical knowledge as a nursing science, and if we want to implement science well, it requires innovation to do that. So recently at a conference I attended, there was talk about AI and how that compares to our current process. And one of the things that was really striking to me was how automated intelligence relies on the mean, the middle, the average to do its work. And what was very striking to me in that example and how this expert modeled how AI will shape our future thinking was that it's going to be up to the humans to then push the boundaries of thinking out of the innovative or out of that average space, so that there are indeed innovations. So I think innovation is becoming even more important in many facets of our life, and that includes our nursing practice and leadership. So I've taught innovation to students from many disciplines, including nursing, but business and entrepreneurship and writing, and from several different institutions, so from JMU and UVA and nurse practitioners and physicians and PAs. This is not something new for me. And I've done some research on students as they exit classes, and this quote was published in an article I wrote with a colleague, Ludwig, and several other folks in 2017 after having taught some of the same methods you'll be learning in this course to undergraduates. And one of the consistent themes that people emerge with is I just didn't think of myself as a creative person, and I began to learn that I could be creative and innovative, and there were ways I could change the work I currently do through these processes. So I'll let you read that exact quote there, and there's a lot of other ones in that article that are similar if you wanted to go look at that. All right, so I told you about wicked problems and why it's so important to have innovation for them. But how do we even define a wicked problem? Wicked problems were first defined by Ritter and Weber in 1973, And these characteristics all define a wicked problem. I'm going to highlight a few of them. In a wicked problem, there's no clear problem definition always. So think about homelessness. There's a scope of spectrum on homelessness or food insecurity. There's not always this clear way to wrap your head even around the problem. There's multiple stakeholders with conflicting interest. So, for example, I've worked on food insecurity with groups of students, and one of the, ironic things is that there's a whole network of businesses and nonprofits built up around maintaining and supporting people who are food insecure. Now, I do believe that those nonprofits would prefer to not be in business and have there be no food insecurity. But the irony that if we were to completely solve that problem, those nonprofits, those jobs, that process would go away is indeed part of a challenge in solving those problems. And wicked problems are intricately connected to other issues. So you can't just solve that one little aspect because there's so many other issues that feed into why it's a problem. There's not often a solution that is a kind of complete moment of solving the problem. So we're never, or I wish, yet as of now we can't envision saying, yes, I took this class and I solved the problem of food insecurity. But things can get better and worse. And you can work at specific aspects of the problem, and those can make big improvements within that overall challenge. So I'm not going to read each and every aspect of a wicked problem. I just wanted to highlight some of the more defining aspects of a wicked problem for you, and you can read every specific here. I guess the one last thing I will highlight is that wicked problems, they often span different disciplinary boundaries and organizational boundaries. And this is one of the things that is most frustrating, and I have a vision for us changing as part of nurse leaders, is that we need to overcome our silos, both organizationally and also discipline boundaries, in order to solve these challenges. And as we come to the end of this course, we'll be talking about how to leverage some of the strategies you learn in the course to do that, to break through some of those disciplinary boundaries and why that's important. We're not going to come to that for quite some time, but I want you to know we will be getting back to that. And I'll also tell you that my preferred method for teaching what you're learning in this class is in a multidisciplinary context. That's not something that we can do in this class, yet we will be consistently requesting the input of a variety of people to leverage that diversity that allows for solving wicked problems. And I want you to kind of keep that in mind, that we're somewhat isolated in our exercises here, and the broader that these things can be applied, ultimately, the better. Okay, that's a wicked problem, and I guess some other content there. So you've perhaps realized as we've begun this course that I am by nature more of a big picture kind of systems person than a detailed person. I work hard though to get the details right because they're important to the big picture. And this is one of those details that I want us to focus on because it can lead to some misunderstandings when we're talking about methods in this course and as we think about applying them outside of the course. So innovation versus innovative. Innovation is a noun. It is the act of innovating and leads to a new method, idea, or product often. Those are just some examples. Innovative is an adjective. It describes the thing, the new, advanced, or original product, or the new, original, or creative thinking. So if I was to say innovative process, I would be saying that process was new. If I was to say innovation process, I would be saying that that was a process that was taking you through the process of innovating. So we'll be largely talking in this class about innovation process. However, it gets a little muddy because sometimes that leads to new things that are innovative. Okay, I'm even catching myself up here. So just, it's okay if you interchange these words. I wanted to take us back to the basics of understanding what they each are so we can move forward with the shared language as best we can. So largely what we are talking about right now in this course is innovation models and methods. So many innovation models share similarities. There are many of them out there, at least 5 kind of common models. And next lecture, next module, we're going to get into a specific innovation model, design thinking. We'll look at that a little bit here today, but we're going to tease out the specifics of that, and we'll see what's unique about that specific innovation model and why I feel like it's a good fit for nursing. Yet I want to think here about what innovation models share and then compare that to other models of thinking. So innovation models share that they begin with cultivating a foundation for ideas. There's a basis for how the model roots, what they root the idea creation in. And then listing and selecting those ideas comes next. Moving on to an implementation and testing process. Most innovation models talk about the model linearly, yet the models are implemented in a iterative way. So we do this in nursing too, right? Like when we talk about the nursing process, we lay it out very systematically. But then when a nurse, especially an experienced nurse, implements the process in practice, you almost can't even see those individual steps. They just mesh together. They become kind of fluid, and we often don't even talk about them using these steps in the way that we did initially. But to teach it, to get someone thinking in this way, you really have to lay it out kind of stepwise. And it's the exact same way with innovation models. We're going to be laying this out very stepwise, but a person who's an experienced designer, who's an experienced innovator, would implement these models in a way that was very seamless and fluid and iterative. So now you see these characteristics that are common of many innovation models. I don't think you need to look at a bunch of different innovation models and sort out the exact differences. We're just going to pick one and get some familiarity with it and then see what it means for nursing in this course. So the one we're going to pick is design thinking. You'll be introduced to design thinking this week in your creativity exercise. And after that, because I want you to experience it first and then talk about it, after that, we'll discuss the unique attributes of design thinking, how those attributes are different from other innovation models, and how we may leverage those unique attributes to integrate into our other thinking as nurse leaders. The purpose of this specific lecture is to compare innovation models to other process models and think about how they're different in general from other process models and how they might fit together. So this is your first look at design thinking. There's 5 steps: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And you can see those areas that we talked are common to all innovation models. The root of design thinking's innovations is an empathy for the stakeholders involved. And then it involves this selecting of ideas and narrowing down and selecting ideas. And then involves this prototyping and testing aspect. So you can see the similarities from that last slide and the things we talked about being common to all innovation models. And again, we'll get into what's different about design thinking after you finish your creativity exercise, this module. All right, so people often conflate entrepreneurship and innovation, and one of the things I want you to take away from this lecture is to separate the two of those. This is the Lean Launchpad. It's proposed by Steve Blank, who is, by many accounts, the father of entrepreneurship. And these are the things you need to start a business. This is a comprehensive planning document that many people around the world use if they want to engage in entrepreneurship. And just kind of glancing at this, we're not going to get into every detail because it's not the direction we're headed. I've used this model in several courses where we include business students who hope to take their innovations on. but our purpose isn't going to be that. Yet I want you to look through each of these and just get a sense of what is needed in that situation so that we can understand kind of the difference between this and innovation process. So this is all from an article that Blank wrote in 2013 for Harvard Business Review. And in that article, by the way, in that article, he goes on to lay out some of the other aspects of entrepreneurship, and we'll move on to that. I do want to pause here and say that I have directly copied this image from that article. You see I cite it there in the lower right. One of the things in my teaching I try to do is call out things that I do that are different than what you should do in certain circumstances. So if you're creating a video for class, it is completely appropriate for you to do the same thing, for you to copy from your textbook, from other articles, as long as you give the reference and citation, you're doing that properly. However, if you're presenting outside of an educational setting, education has waivers for how we are allowed to use copyrighted information. But if you're presenting at your health system, if you're presenting in your document at the end of your DNP study that will be published, if you're presenting in your end of program DNP presentation that is viewable beyond our program, if you're presenting at Omega Zeta, no matter where it is outside of just a defined educational course, you cannot copy and paste art images from other places unless they are explicitly allowing for that. All right, so this is drilling down. Sorry about that. That little tangent, I guess, is helpful to you, but maybe it isn't specific to the context of this lecture. So take that for what it was. We're going to drill down to Blank's kind of closer look at this process. And here's where we get into seeing, when he sketched out the way this looks, some of the overlap between entrepreneurship and innovation. So you can see these circles and iterative cycles that involve several of the things that we were talking about. Minimum viable product is the same thing as prototype when we looked at innovation model. You can see the planning, the implementation, the testing, evaluation, a lot of those cyclical things are similar. Now, where is it different? So if you go back to the prior slide or think about that same larger model, many of the details of the entrepreneurship model are in addition to what we think about in innovation. So I want to drill down yet further than this to what's similar. The value proposition canvas, so right in the center of that model, that with all the different aspects, 2 slides back, the value proposition was there in the center top. And the center top value proposition is that overlap between innovation and entrepreneurship thinking. So when I teach design thinking and it includes business students, we begin with design thinking, we move to the value proposition, explain the overlap, and then move to the larger business model canvas. Essentially, the value proposition is talking to customers to figure out the jobs that they need to do in their lives, discussing the related pains, what makes those jobs worse, and the gains, what could be done or what is being done to make those jobs easier. And that's the foundation for ideas. And that's that empathy part of design thinking that you saw in the earlier slides. There's an overlap. So there's a couple of reasons I highlight this. First off, this gaining empathy part of design thinking and this value proposition aspect of entrepreneurship are shared. They're also different from what we do in healthcare. So it's one of the things that we're ultimately going to leverage to change our thinking. I also highlight it because it illustrates how innovation is part of entrepreneurship, but it's not the same thing. There are other aspects of entrepreneurship that don't have to be included in innovation thinking. So why is it important for us to separate these? It's important because the innovation process can be isolated from entrepreneurship and then inserted into other process. Some people call this intrapreneurship, when you take innovations and apply them in a way that's not intended to create new business. And I have some visions for how we can do this in healthcare. I'll share those with you. They're pretty rough. And I don't expect these to completely make sense to you until we begin to drill down into the aspects of design thinking that are distinct, that we want to include in our way of thinking in healthcare. But just to give an early introduction to that, if you think about the scientific process, which is essentially what we use for idea, so it's in this observation and questioning aspect of the scientific method and hypothesis generation that we can insert the ideas of innovation methods and then essentially kind of output in the prototyping phase of innovation methods into the experimentation phase of the scientific process. So you kind of can overlay innovation methods with that right-hand side of the scientific process, take what we learn from innovation methods, use them in those aspects of the scientific process, and then finish with some of the more traditional process. Moving on to the Plan, Do, Study, Act model. I really appreciate the Plan, Do, Study, Act model. Use it a lot in DMP work. It is probably the most used model for our JMU DMP students. And if we consider what are the distinguishing features of innovation models and how it could change our process if it were inserted, again, we'll be talking about that more as we learn about the distinguishing features. I wanted to show you kind of where I would envision that being inserted. And I would envision it being inserted in that planning stage, this innovation model, and then kind of, again, outputting during the prototyping phase into the do. So overlaying that model of innovation over the Plan and Do aspects of the Plan, Do, Study, Act method. So that's how I envision it fitting. Let's get next into what are these specific aspects and why should we even be trying to add them anyways? And that's what we'll be learning next module.